Welcome our next live guest. We've got Phil Schmidbauer with us from ODW Logistics. Phil, thank you for coming back on the show once again, and we're excited to get in to talk to you a little bit.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me again.
Excellent to see you, sir, and welcome to the show this morning. Now, let's talk about the different markets that are out there and some of the obstacles that are out there, right? We just, obviously, when things were on fire, you had all kinds of obstacles during the last, it seems like, I guess it was 10 years ago was like 2019, it seems like, right? But now we're in a totally different situation. Is it time you can all just take a breather and kick back and relax and watch some college football and not worry about it?
I like that idea, but the answer is no to our customers. To me, it's still a relationship business. I think people have to be very careful when they look at chasing rates. If you have contract carriers and you're starting to beat them down a little bit and work on that, you just got to be careful. And carriers do the same thing, right? Like they chase the rate when it's available to them. And then now when rates are going down, they're complaining, well, I was getting this for this 3 weeks ago. And we understand that. But so what I tell people is be very careful between treating your contract carriers like a spot carrier, right? Like you've got given them contract rates and however long that's good for, make sure you're taking care of them and maintaining a relationship, and don't burn that relationship to go chase $100 here and $100 there, because in the long run it could hurt you. So I once heard from economists, we can never predict the future. We can tell you what we think is going to happen. Things are going to go up or they're going to go down, but after the fact, we'll explain it. Don't be trying to beg and plead for a carrier later on if you hose them on that rate today. So just be careful how you handle a spot versus dedicated carrier rates is one of my big things to look at.
Absolutely, especially in a time like this where it's almost not worth literally trying to nickel and dime yourself into a little bit more margin if it means that you're going to lose out on this relationship in the long run. And Phil, a lot of people are kind of still trying to toss up, do we use the word recession? Do we not use the word recession? Are we in a technical recession, but our labor market's not reflecting that? But regardless, we're sitting in this time where we're kind of coming back, I would say almost below our normalization levels that we saw in 2020. Of course, 2020 was just this explosion, and now we're falling back. So it feels like we're in this massive regression of the markets totally. But as we get back to the normalizing, what do you think are some of those unique struggles that come back with it looking like a recession, but not necessarily being fully into a recession?
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, we've seen a ton of carriers enter the marketplace, right? Interest rates are starting to go back up, and everybody's talking about what does this mean? And I honestly, it's taking it day by day, treading cautiously. And again, I hate beating this drum, but be efficient with what you're shipping, right? The rates are going to do what the rates are going to do, but be efficient with what you're shipping, how you're shipping it. We just had a customer that we were working with, and they went through an RFP. And one of the things I'll tell people is just be very careful with what somebody's selling you and make sure they're going to deliver what they're selling you, right? And a lot of people look at a 3PL and say, well, I'm going to go find the 3PL that's going to give me the best rate. Don't just look at the rates, look at the process and how they go through their process and how they're going to handle your freight and manage your freight, and make sure you build relationships with the people that you're going to be doing business with. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen people go through that process and come out on the other end with something that they didn't expect. And I've heard people before say, well, we expected to get savings and we didn't get it, but it's too expensive to change back now. So people need to stop shopping rate so much and shop process and understand, do you have somebody handling your freight that knows and understands the market and has a good process behind what they're going to do?
So, Phil, those are great words of advice, right? Because how we react during this particular cycle will dictate how the next cycle really treats us, right? And how intensely it treats us that way, especially in freight. I mean, it's true in everything, but I know freight the most, and that's really whether you're a carrier, a 3PL, or a shipper, any one of the three natural participants, you have to look at it that way, right? And so when you're a shipper right now, what are those things that you need to be looking at? Let's say that you did screw up during the pandemic there, and you really took advantage of what was going on, and now you don't have those business partners. Or let's say before it, you weren't thinking this way and you didn't have those business partners and you were the one that was paying exorbitant prices for your freight to move because you didn't have those relationships. You can't just say, oh, well, I'll toss it off to a 3PL and let them handle it. Like you said, what should they be looking for at a 3PL that ensures that 3PL has the strength and the relationships with those carriers to provide to them through the next cycle? Yeah,
well, a lot of it is just understanding a mix. Like we have people that will send us send us volume and say, well, I've got a shipment a week or a shipment every month, and I want you to give me a price on it for the next 6 months. And it's like, keep in mind what you're asking, right? If you have something running 2 days a week, somebody can get you a dedicated price on that and keep that consistent and get that price from the carrier, right? We don't like to dedicate pricing to a customer unless we get it from a carrier. Otherwise, it's basically on the spot market, right? If you're only running a load once a week, it's a spot market load. So price it as such. So the big thing is a lot of people don't understand transportation markets. That's why I love FreightWaves, right? Because you guys are trying to educate people on what transportation markets are doing, how they react. And so we try to educate our customers on that as well. So I guess my advice to shippers is try to find somebody that can help educate you on the transportation markets, how they operate, and listen to them. They're the experts. They know what they're doing. But you have to understand the difference between spot and contracted rates. And that really comes from the carrier is the only one that can guarantee you a rate because they have the equipment. So from a 3PL standpoint, we tell our customers either this is a spot rate or this is contracted.
Side of things. We talked a little bit about kind of obstacles on the shipper side, but what about on the carrier side right now? Obviously, we know that cost of operation and cost of running is really high right now. We're still seeing a backlog in maintenance, a backlog in getting new equipment out. What are they looking at dealing with as this market goes back to normalization? And how can either as a shipper or as a 3PL, you work with them to be understanding about the problems that they're facing?
Yeah, so we work with carriers, especially a lot of our partners, when it comes to like contracted rates that they've had in place for a while now. Look, we understand where the spot market is, but we're not going back and hammering on them and saying, look, if we used to give you $1,600 on this and the spot market's at $1,300, we need $1,250. We understand, like, work with us a little bit because generally speaking, in contracted rates, we've also contracted a rate with our customer. Right. So we are trying to help our customer relieve that. And that's, you see that in the markets. You see that contract rates always follow spot market. Right. And so as spot goes up consistently, contract will follow shortly thereafter. So I think a lot of people take the same kind of tack that we do, that we're not going to hammer on them too bad, but they do work with us in a great partnership to help them navigate the same undulations in pricing that we're seeing.
Yeah. So, Phil, advice for shippers, carriers, both moving into fourth quarter and traditional bid season, what things are going to look like, and how to negotiate this the best for your service and for your price?
Yeah, I think find the best process for your business, right? Is it a spot? Is your business spot market or is it highly contracted? If it's spot market, find a process that's going to drive competition. Find somebody that can help you manage it. If you're managing it yourself, that's great, but just make sure you're driving competition, because as these rates go up and down, if you're locking somebody into a yearly rate, I talked to a small shipper and they said, well, we get rates at the beginning of the year from our 3PL, and then we just hold on to those for the year. I can only imagine what those rates look like if you're still billing what you were billing in January of this year, or being billed. So just make sure that if you're a spot market business, that you have a setup to where you can drive competition and make sure you're getting a competitive spot market rate on a daily and weekly basis. And then if you're contracted business, just be fair with the people you're contracting with.
Phil, I know you mentioned earlier, you can't tell the future, but if you had to take a shot in the dark and say kind of where you think the pendulum's going to swing, either in the last quarter or even moving into the start of 2023, do you think that we're going to go kind of back to this normalization, or still see kind of this overextended, really just kind of unique situation in our markets?
I don't see it changing a whole lot. When we look into the end of this year, and I know you guys have a lot of data out there that we've looked at as well, that going into the end of this year, I don't see rates coming back up. I see them continuing to dip. I do have a feeling that sometime maybe November, December, we might see fuel prices start to go back up. So I see things just slowing down, and hopefully people are planning for that from their business standpoint, and just being smart and flexible in this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with those sentiments, and don't take advantage of your carriers, and don't take advantage of your shippers. Let's keep it smooth sailing going into next year, and that'd be just fine with everybody, I think, right? After the last few years. Thank you so much, Phil. You have a wonderful day. We'll catch up with you again a little bit later on. Right now, we're going to head over to Sydney Edwards and the latest headlines, are we not?